Hi, our dear listeners. Welcome to another episode of Speak Up. If you're joining us again, thank you for coming back. Seriously, we don't take that for granted. And if this is your first time here, we're really happy you found us. Now, let's be honest. If you clicked on this episode, chances are you've been struggling with this exact issue. You want to speak English fluently, but your brain keeps translating from Urdu first. That tiny pause before speaking, that mental delay, we see you, and today we're going to talk about it. This is a space where we talk honestly about what it's like to learn and live with another language. So, take a breath, settle in. Today's topic is something nearly every English learner goes through, especially if your first language is Urdu or Hindi, that frustrating feeling when every sentence starts in your native language before it reaches your mouth in English.
Exactly. And it's such a common struggle, but no one really talks about it in a simple human way. Thinking in one language and trying to speak in another, it creates so much mental stress. And that hesitation, it can feel like the world slows down and your voice disappears. But the good news is you're not broken and you're not alone. If this sounds familiar, you're in the right place, because in today's episode, we're going to walk you through exactly why this happens and how to shift this habit gently and naturally, without pressure or panic. And hey, if you're enjoying these episodes or if this topic sounds like it's meant for you, consider subscribing. It really helps the podcast grow, and it helps us reach more people who are walking the same path as you.
I've been there too, standing in a room, trying to say something simple, and my brain just stalls. Not because I didn't know the words, but because I was translating everything from Urdu first. And that delay, it steals your confidence. So in this episode, we're not promising magic, but we are giving you real tools. Simple shifts that can help you train your brain to think in English more often so speaking becomes smoother and more natural over time. We'll talk through what this mental habit really looks like and how you can start recognizing and changing it in your daily life.
And by the end of this episode, we hope you'll feel a little more at ease, like your mind and your voice are finally starting to move in the same direction. You don't need to become perfect overnight, but you can start building the habit of thinking in English in a way that feels honest, relaxed, and doable. So if you've been craving that kind of change, just stay with us. This episode was made for you.
So let's first understand what happens when you translate everything in your head. I think we've all been there. When someone asks you a simple question and you just freeze for a second. It's not that you don't know the answer. It's that your brain is racing in one language and trying to respond in another. That tiny pause, it can feel huge. I remember once someone asked me for directions, and I knew exactly what I wanted to say, but it was like my thoughts were stuck behind a glass wall. I was thinking in Urdu, trying to grab the English words one by one, and by the time I opened my mouth, the moment felt awkward. It's exhausting when every sentence has to be translated midair, isn't it?
Yes, and what makes it harder is that no one around you sees what's happening. From the outside, it just looks like you're slow or unsure, but inside, you're doing a full mental juggling act, switching words, fixing grammar, thinking about tone, all in a few seconds. And sometimes you just forget what you were trying to say altogether. That feeling of your sentence breaking halfway through, it's not because you're weak in English. It's because your brain is working overtime just to bridge that gap. It's not a language issue. It's a processing issue.
That's such a good point. And what I've noticed is the more you try to translate every little thing, the more tired you get, not just mentally, but emotionally too. Like after a whole day of trying to speak in English by translating from Urdu, your brain feels foggy. You speak more slowly. You second guess yourself constantly. And over time, you start to avoid speaking altogether, just to avoid that feeling. I've seen people go completely silent, not because they don't care, but because they're just exhausted by the back and forth inside their own heads.
And that silence you're talking about, it's so real. I think it breaks your confidence over time. You might start a sentence, but then stop halfway thinking, well, that doesn't sound right. Or wait, what's the word for that? It's like your brain becomes a maze. And the saddest part, you end up saying less than what you actually want to say. You might know a beautiful thought in Urdu, but you just can't carry it across that mental bridge. So slowly, you stop trying. And that's the real loss, not just of words, but of connection.
That really hits home. And it shows how this issue isn't just about communication. It's about identity. When you're always translating, you're filtering your thoughts. You're not letting your ideas come out fully. It's like there's always a delay between who you are and what you say. And that delay, it creates distance between you and others, and even between you and yourself. I felt that distance before. And I know so many people listening right now are feeling it too.
Which is exactly why this conversation matters. Because once we understand that it's not a matter of how many words you know, but how your brain is handling the switch, we can begin to change it. We can stop blaming ourselves for being too slow or too shy or not fluent enough. It's about shifting the way we think, not just the way we speak. So if this constant translation is making us tired, hesitant, and disconnected, then what's the way out?
You know, something really strange happened to me a while back. I was walking to the store just thinking about what I needed to buy, and halfway through that thought, I realized everything in my head was in Urdu. I hadn't even noticed. And I thought, wait, when did I choose to think in Urdu? I didn't. It just happened. That's when it hit me. We don't choose our thought language consciously. It's automatic. And most of the time, we don't even realize which language our mind is speaking in until we're suddenly trying to speak out loud and everything slows down.
That's so true. It's like we carry this inner voice everywhere, and it runs in the background without us really hearing it. But it shapes everything, how we express ourselves, how we understand things, even how we respond emotionally. Like, have you ever noticed that when you're feeling sad or stressed, your thoughts almost always go back to your native language? It's a comfort zone. And during moments of pressure, like job interviews or phone calls, we feel that sudden crash because we're switching between that comfort and something unfamiliar, often without realizing it.
Exactly. And I think before we can even start changing anything, we have to first notice what's already there. That's the quiet step that most people skip. What language do you think in when you wake up? When you're brushing your teeth? When you're making a decision? These moments are tiny, but they reveal everything. And it's not about judging yourself or forcing anything. It's just about paying attention, noticing. Because when we become aware of our thought language, we finally stop running on autopilot.
And that awareness creates space, like real space. Suddenly, you're not just reacting or translating, you're actually noticing your mind at work. Do you realize, oh, I always say this to myself in Urdu, or I never describe my feelings in English? And that realization alone, it's powerful. It tells you where your brain feels safe and where it might need a little more training. And once you can see that, you're already halfway to changing it.
You know what I like to do sometimes? I just sit for a few minutes and listen to the way I'm thinking. Not out loud, just quietly in my own head. And I try not to change anything, not even one word. I just observe. And some days the thoughts are mixed. Some days they're mostly Urdu. But that moment of honesty with myself, it helps more than any vocabulary list. It's like your brain is showing you where it lives and where it wants to go.
So maybe that's the challenge we leave for today. Just notice. For one day, don't change your thoughts. Don't try to speak differently. Just observe. What language shows up when you're not trying? What language do you trust when you're tired or excited or scared? There's no right or wrong here, just a little self-awareness. That's how change really begins, quietly, without noise or force.
You know what's really helped me and many other English learners I've worked with? Just picking one small activity and deciding, okay, for the next few minutes, I'll think about this in English. That's it. No pressure to speak, no grammar rules, just silent thinking. It could be something as basic as washing dishes or folding laundry. You simply start describing what you're doing. Like, I'm putting the plate here. Now I need to wipe the counter. These little moments are powerful because they're stress-free. They slowly start rewiring your brain to default to English, one thought at a time.
Exactly, Ryan. And I love how you mentioned stress-free. That's so important. I think people sometimes try to force fluency, like they expect their brain to switch languages overnight. But honestly, it doesn't work that way. What works is comfort, feeling relaxed in English. So even if you're just planning your day in your head, something like, today I'll go to the store, then call my friend, that counts. It's not about saying the perfect sentence. It's about training your brain to feel normal when it uses English.
Yes, and you can apply this to all sorts of moments, like when you're brushing your teeth, making tea, or organizing your bag. Just pause and ask yourself, how would I describe this in English? You don't even need to get it 100% right. The point is to try. The more you engage your thoughts in English, especially in these calm, everyday moments, the easier it becomes over time. And the best part? You're building fluency without even opening your mouth.
And you don't need a notebook or an app to do this. You already have the perfect practice tool, your own mind. I sometimes tell my students, let your inner voice be your English teacher. Because when you start hearing your own thoughts in English, even simple ones, you create a very personal connection with the language. It becomes part of you. Not something outside of you, not something foreign. That's when things begin to shift in a really natural way.
I still remember the first time I caught myself thinking in English without realizing it. It was such a small thought, something like, where are my keys? But I smiled because it felt like progress. That's the beauty of this practice. You don't see instant results, but over time, they build up. Every sentence, every tiny shift is part of a bigger transformation. So if you're listening right now and thinking, is this enough? Yes, it absolutely is. You're doing the work.
And if you ever feel like it's too slow, just remind yourself that fluency is a feeling, not a finish line. You're not waiting to become perfect before you speak or think. You're building a new habit, a new rhythm inside your mind. So whether it's while you're cooking, walking, or getting ready for bed, start small. Even one sentence, even one word in English can be a step forward. Trust the process. You're growing, even if it's quiet.
You know, this stage can feel really uncomfortable, and that's actually a good sign. When you try to think in English and your brain freezes or feels blank, that's not failure. That's your mind stepping out of its usual routine. And honestly, it's something every learner experiences. I remember thinking, why does this feel so hard? Why can't I just say what I know? But it wasn't about intelligence, it was about building a new habit. And like all new habits, it felt clumsy at first.
Exactly. And I think what really helps is knowing that this weird, awkward phase is actually part of your growth. It's your brain adjusting, rewiring itself to work differently. So yes, it might feel slow. You might pause a lot. You might even laugh at how strange your thoughts sound. But please don't give up at that point. That discomfort, it's a signal that change is happening inside you.
One thing that really helped me was not rushing. I gave myself permission to speak slowly, to fumble a little, and to use very basic words at first. I didn't jump back to Urdu the moment things got tough. I stayed with the discomfort for just a little longer each time. And slowly, I noticed that the pauses got shorter and the sentences came out more easily. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency.
Yes, and a practical tip I always give is choose one simple situation, maybe brushing your teeth or making tea, and just try to talk yourself through it in English. No audience, no pressure, just you and your thoughts. Say things like, now I'm opening the cabinet, or I need to boil the water. You'll feel silly at first, but over time, it becomes surprisingly normal. That's how confidence quietly builds.
And here's something that helps me emotionally. I reminded myself that the goal wasn't to impress anyone. It was just to stretch my thinking muscle a little bit more each day. I started looking at those silent pauses not as failures, but as little training moments, moments where my mind was learning something new. And that mindset shift made a huge difference.
So if you're listening and feeling stuck right now, that's okay. You're in the middle of something meaningful. The more you sit with that discomfort instead of avoiding it, the faster your brain learns to adjust. Trust the process, let it be messy. It's how fluency begins, not with speed, but with patience.
One of the most beautiful parts of this journey is when progress sneaks up on you, like you're washing dishes or walking to the store, and suddenly a little phrase pops into your head in English, and you didn't even try. That's when you realize, wait, I just thought in English without meaning to. That's a win. It's quiet but powerful, and those moments matter far more than speaking perfectly. They're signs that your brain is getting comfortable little by little.
Exactly. You don't need to wait for some huge breakthrough. Progress often looks like tiny shifts, like understanding a sentence on a signboard or forming a sentence halfway in English before your mind switches back. That's still progress. It means your brain is trying, and that effort counts. I always tell learners it's not about thinking perfectly. It's about building a habit that becomes natural over time.
I remember one day I caught myself saying, I should clean the room, just in my head, in English. No pressure, no planning, it just happened. That was the first time I felt peaceful about my progress. It wasn't loud or exciting, but it was real. So if you've had even one of those moments, take it seriously. Celebrate it quietly. That's your brain adapting even when it doesn't feel dramatic.
And I think a lot of people miss those subtle signs because they're too focused on what they can't do yet. But think about it. If you catch even part of a sentence forming naturally in your mind, or if you start understanding English content a little faster, those are huge markers of progress. Don't brush them off just because they're not perfect. Those little shifts add up.
And here's something else. You might feel more relaxed when hearing English, less anxious. That too is a sign your mind is adjusting. For me, that happened before I could even speak fluently. I just felt calmer while listening, and that gave me the confidence to keep going. So watch for those feelings. They're quieter than a grammar rule, but they matter so much more.
So let's close this part gently. You don't need perfect thoughts. You don't need flawless grammar in your head. If your thoughts start mixing English with your native language, or if a small phrase appears out of nowhere, that's movement. That's growth. This shift doesn't need to be loud. You'll know it's working when your thoughts begin to surprise you in the best way.
As we come to the end of today's episode, I just want to say thank you so much for spending this time with us. We know your time is valuable, and we truly try to make every minute count. Learning English, especially training your inner voice, is a journey filled with small steps and subtle victories. If anything from today's episode made you think differently or feel more confident, then we've done our job. Keep listening, keep growing, and remember, you're not alone.
Yes, thank you all for being here with us. We hope this episode helped you recognize how powerful your inner voice can be in shaping fluency. Even the smallest changes matter. So be patient, be kind to yourself, and trust the process. We're so grateful to be a part of your learning journey, and we'll be right here with you in the next episode. Until then, take care and keep speaking up, even if it's only in your head.